Hey everybody, welcome back to Conquest of Ea. And it's been a couple weeks since I made a video. I finally got some time to sit down and record something. So this video we're going to go over the difference between the Gilded Legion and the Steel Legion in the 100 Kingdoms, because I know that was requested by one of the subs on YouTube, which is awesome. And speaking of subs, we have like 360 some now, which is awesome for such a growing game and growing wargaming community. I really appreciate if you like the content, if you could throw me a subscription, and we can just keep growing the community here and keep putting out the knowledge about the game of Conquest by Bellum out there, so more and more people start playing. If more and more people playing, Adepticon had 38 people at their Conquest event, which is awesome. It looks like it was won by city-states with just 2 big units of hoplites and a bunch of the Minotaurs. There were some super skewed shooting lists in there as well, just like a couple of those, which I kind of thought there would be more because of how strong some of the shooting can get in the game. But it looks like the city-states player really managed to mitigate a lot of that shooting because of the anti-shooting tech from the polemarks in the list, which is really cool. So it's smart that that player recognized that shooting is going to get pretty big probably here, so this is what I'm going to take to kind of beat the meta, and they were definitely correct. That's awesome. And then I've been playing a lot of Spires recently, and I saw one of the players that came in, I think it was second, was running 3 units of 3 Vanguard Clone Infiltrators, and that is just a ton of shots coming out, but it is short range, so I'll have to go over on Goonhammer. They actually put out an article. I think they did an interview with the Spires player as well as one of the other players that finished pretty high, and they talked about their games and stuff like that. So if you go over to Goonhammer, I'll put a link to the article down below in the video description. It's pretty good because it's actually an interview with the players themselves. So we'll have to see how their games went. I think it's included in there. And then the other list that I saw that just caught my eye was a list that a Dwaycom player around here actually runs, is the Tempered Sorcerer list with the 2 Tempered Sorcerers with all the fire magic and the little tokens that they can throw in successes, which is super annoying, and some decent shooting in Fireforge and stuff. And I know a lot of this, that's the higher level competitive play. When you start to get to any game and go to events like Adepticon, you're going to get the players that are bringing the list to win. They're bringing, they still want to have a good time playing, obviously, but they're there to come in first in the event. And it's interesting to see how Conquest is now, going in that direction of, it's developing a meta now because it's getting a little bigger, and it's developing, things that are good, things that aren't so good. And I really think in Conquest, more than in other games, it comes down to player skill more than what's in the meta. I mean, we saw lists that did really well, like 4 and 2, 5 and 1, that really didn't skew heavy into that shooting and beat some of the shooting lists. And we saw a list that, was a brand new army that just won without any shooting in it. I mean, to be fair, it teched a little bit of anti-shooting with the polemarks, but I mean, it's not a ton. So it's really cool to start seeing Conquest's competitive meta take shape and to see what people take. And now we'll see that people see these lists and they're posted online. They're going to take them and kind of make them their own and play them and adapt them to their own metas, and we'll see even more and more iterations of them, which I can't wait to see. Speaking of, if you're going to add some things to your army list to kind of shape to that meta, or if you want to play more competitive games, I am affiliated with Frontline Gaming, and I have a link down below in the video description for my affiliate link. They actually sell a lot of Conquest product over on their web store, as you can see here. They have all the factions listed. They're still working on getting the city-states up to their web store. But I've been playing a lot of Spires recently, and if you're taking a look at all that shooting list, or you want to buy 3 boxes of Vanguard Clone Infiltrators, Frontline Gaming has them. You can see there's a discount off MSRP here if you use my link. That'll be down in the description. And I get a small kickback for every purchase you guys make in this way, and I really appreciate it, and it supports the channel. So if you're looking to grow your Conquest armies, or if my videos can convince you to start playing Conquest, definitely go over and check out Frontline Gaming. Start with taking a look at the Gilded Legion, and this is actually a regiment that I don't have a ton of experience with. I tend to use a Steel Legion every time I play 100 Kingdoms, and taking a look at the Gilded Legion right off the bat, they're competing for that restricted slot with the Imperial Officers Warband, so you have to make a really, really informed and deliberate decision to which one of these two units you're going to take, because they're both elite, expensive, heavy infantry. And with the new 2.0 rules of the game, where you get to pick one heavy unit coming in, I tend to just have one heavy in my list, 400 kingdoms at least, that I know I can pick to come in on turn 3 to guarantee him to get him on the board with that Vanguard with the Imperial Officer's Supremacy ability. So I don't know if I would ever include Gilded Legion with Steel Legion in my list, but taking a look at both of these units, it can be interesting to see, which one you would take in certain situations or certain army builds, because they don't really perform the same role, because they're both obviously elite heavy infantry, but they can do very different things on the battlefield. I mean, other than beat the crap out of stuff in melee, but very different things in the way that they do that. So the Gilded Legion to start out are 145 points for 3 stands as opposed to the Steel Legion's 175. So that's obviously a lot cheaper right off the bat, and they're only 45 stands for 45 points for an additional stand as opposed to the 50 for the Steel Legion. So if you're at a points crunch, you can really get some Gilded Legion in there who have the same Clash of 3, the same defense of 3, a higher resolve of 4, which is awesome. It makes them a little more autonomous and don't really need a character in there to have that really, really high resolve. And now they have 4 attacks, as Steel Legion has 5 attacks, but we can upgrade with that with a command model or an officer model, which we'll see in a second. So they have some special rules, just like Steel Legion does, but they have a little bit of different special rules to, kind of make them their own unit on the tabletop. So they have Iron Discipline, which Steel Legion does not have, which reads, this regiment suffers no penalties for having an enemy regiment in contact with its flank or rear. So no re-rolling of your successful morale test if you're charging the flank or rear, and you still get to use their other special rule and the Support 2 special rule, no matter where you've been charged from. Because normally if you're charged from the flank or rear, you don't get to use those support attacks or your support special rule, but this unit just ignores that completely, which is pretty awesome. So not re-rolling successful morale, they can really go right in the middle of your battle line, and if they get charged on the flank, you just don't care about that. And support 2 is really awesome on these guys. If you take a bigger block of 6 of them, we'll say, then you're just getting more attacks than the Steel Legion would get just for having some guys right up front. They come in with a Cleave 1, which is pretty good just to have that standard built into the unit. I mean, obviously if you're charging things that have like Harden 1, it sucks, but you're going to have a lot of attacks with supports, and you're very, very accurate with that Clash of 3, 4 when you're inspired. That even if that Cleave gets taken away, you should still get some damage through. Now the officers these guys can take is pretty interesting, because they can take a Seasoned Veteran for 20 points that gives them Bastion, so they'll go up to that defense of 4 once they get that draw event, which is very good. Or they can take a Drill Master, which gives them +1 attack per stand for 20 points. So it really depends on if an Imperial Officer is going to go inside of this unit or not. Oh, and the Drill Master, I forgot to mention, gives them double time as well, which is really good. So if the Imperial Officer is going in these guys, he can obviously, with his battlefield orders, give Bastion already. So the Drill Master is a no-brainer to throw in there for the more attacks. But one of the perks of these guys is they're so independent with their Resolve of 4 and their Iron Discipline support. They don't really need that officer to go inside of the Gilded Legion. So if I was just running, 5 or 6 stands of these Gilded Legion, I would just take a Seasoned Veteran for the Bastion to make sure they can get to that defense 4. And they can really just operate on their own anywhere on the table. You don't really have to worry about the Imperial Officer that would be inside of these guys getting called out for a challenge or a duel. You don't have to worry about the Imperial Officer given the buffs to this unit. He can go somewhere else in a big block of Men-at-Arms, or maybe you want to throw in the Steel Legion, or you want to put in a unit, like a shooting unit that the Imperial Officer can buff instead of a melee unit, which is kind of what I do usually. So I really like the Gilded Legion. The more that I look at them, the more that I see they do have a very specific use in the army that's completely separate from Steel Legion. It's just I don't know if you would take both at the same time. So let's take a look at Steel Legion, and then afterwards we'll kind of compare the units and see which situations these units would be more advantageous in. So here are the classic Steel Legion. I play these a ton when I play my 100 Kingdoms, And right off the bat, we can see that their attacks are at 5 as opposed to 4 for the Gilded Legion, but their resolve is down to 3. Resolve at 3 is still awesome. Don't get me wrong. It's just, it'll be up to 4 if you have 4 more stands. It just makes them a little more dependent on that Imperial officer. I mean, he has a resolve at 3 as well, but the reason they're more dependent on having an Imperial officer in there is to get that defense 4 through the Bastion, because the Steel Legion can only take the Drill Master as an officer, which the Drill Master gives them the double time as well as gives them 6 attacks per stand, which is amazing. So just 3 stands of these guys at 195 points with the Drill Masters putting out 19 attacks. I tend to take bigger blocks of them. They're super expensive, but you want to have those extra stands to kind of take wounds for you so you can keep up those attacks and maybe heal them back with like a Water Mage. And when I throw my Imperial Officer in here, I always want to have as many wounds as possible, because throwing them in there with just 3 stands, it's kind of easy to knock these guys down with all the extra armor piercing shots in the game, or the high cleave in the game with like Fire Forge, Dragon Slayers, and things like that. They also do have some things, kind of like the Gilded Legion had Iron Discipline. Steel Legion have Bravery and Oblivious. Oblivious is amazing to have on these guys because they only take 1 wound for every 2 failed morale tests. That's great no matter where they get charged at, because while you're still re-rolling the successful ones, if these guys get charged on the flank or the rear, it still takes 2 fails to cause 1 wound. And Bravery makes you ignore the Fearsome and Terrifying special rules. And at the start, after you do your draw event for this regiment, you remove the broken status for free, just like you took a rally action. So this regiment can be broken, it just gets rid of it when it activates, which is awesome. And ignoring the terrifying, so your resolve's not going to be affected. It is also a really, really good rule. So I can see why these guys are slightly more expensive. They're kind of harder hitting with that cleave too, for sure. The Bravery mixed with Oblivious is super strong to keep them, alive when you're taking those morale tests. But they do need that Imperial Officer in there to give them Bastion. And if we're looking at Gilded Legion and Steel Legion, I think it's important that we also take a look at the Imperial Officer and some of the buffs he can kind of give them, because he might be inside of one of these units, and it's interesting to see, what kind of buffs he can provide. So you get the 2 battlefield drills for free. If they're in Gilded Legion or Steel Legion, you're going to take Drill 1 and Drill 2, which is give them the Bastion draw event, which is obviously very important, and Double Time draw event. So the Bastion is really what you're looking for here, but you can resolve 2 draw events with the Imperial Officer inside one of those units, so they'll get the double time as well, which is nice to make them move a little faster around the battlefield. But really what's interesting is some of the banners that you can take, specifically for the Steel Legion. The Gilded Rampart for 20 points just gives them Iron Discipline, so they're getting that over top. The Gilded Legion have it, but now you're giving it to the Steel Legion, so they don't care if they're getting charged in the flank, to make them really, really resistant to taking any morale damage. It is 20 points, and you need that Tactical 1, so it'll be 30 points. But if you're going all in on that Steel Legion build, where they're your really, really strong hammer unit, it's definitely worth it to throw it on the Imperial Officer. The Standard of Steel is also very interesting. It's 40 points, so making it 50 with the Tactical 1, but it gives the Dread special rule to the unit, and it means that regiments in contact with them can't benefit from Inspired, which is really, really awesome if they're charging things, with like Clash 2 that really count on getting that Clash 3 to get to that 50-50 roll to hitting you or not. I mean, just taking a third of the hits away right off the bat because of no Inspired by being in contact with the unit is so good. And if you don't want to take one of those banners, if you think you're kind of defensive enough already, as far as your morale, or the Standard of Steel doesn't really appeal to you, the Armor of Dominion is something. Oh, I clicked that, not the eyeball. The Armor of Dominion is something I've taken a lot of my games, and it's just enemy stands that are touching the character stand lose their Cleave and Smite special rolls. This is just awesome to throw a unit of Gilded Legion or Steel Legion in front of Dragon Slayers, anything with high cleave. I keep saying Dragon Slayers because they have that cleave 3. And just saying, nope, you're cleave 0, I'm defense 4 with my Bastion, and I'm not going to take any morale damage. Best of luck. And by the way, I'm cleave 2. It feels really, really awesome. Just make sure you get charged so the maximum amount of, or you charge, so the maximum amount of stands are touching your Imperial Officer, because it's only stands in contact with the character stand itself, not the regiment. Lose that cleave and smite special rules. So it is a really much harder decision than I thought originally between the Steel Legion and the Gilded Legion. If you've tried out both in your list, or you've tried out, you have an opinion between Steel Legion and Gilded Legion, definitely let me know down in the comments if I missed anything. We're all trying to learn this newer game together as far as a competitive sense, so any feedback will definitely be appreciated. And thanks for everybody for listening and subscribing to the channel. I'm really pumped that it's growing so fast. And good luck in your Conquest games out there.